Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the football podcast, but almost more important than that, it's the first podcast of 2022. Happy New Year to you all, and we're talking football. So we're going through the games from X number of weeks ago that we predicted, all the way up to current. Obviously, you'll see how that turned out. And we're predicting FA Cup games. So there we go. If you've got a spare minute, if you could consider subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, all of those good things to do, that would be amazing. Anyway, let's get cracking. So here we go. This is CookieCast, the football podcast.
Recording in progress.
Now, I'd love to say that this is the first podcast of 2022. And technically it is, because although I've recorded a podcast already in 2022, it won't go out for 3 weeks. So this will go out before it. So technically there has been one, but this is officially the first podcast of 2022 that will be released on the CookieCast network. For you audio listeners out there, you won't know who's here, so we'll have to get the register out. So I'll hand over to the host with the most, and he can reveal the new name of the football podcast, Charlie.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, we're 5 months into the season, and we're still as yet untitled football podcast. But welcome along, ladies and gentlemen. It's your weekly instalment of all things football and football nonsense related material. I'm sure we'll come up with a name by the end of the season, and then it'll have to be changed for some unknown reason following the fortunes or misfortunes of one of our 3 teams and whatnot. So. But yes, I am here as the host.
A date has been put forward for the rebrand of the football podcast as the 2nd of February. But tune into other.
Can we be the football podcast?
Now that is the front runner for names for the football podcast. Obviously, I'm here.
Well, off air, you did refer to this as the Round Ball podcast. So we could just go with that. We could just go round ball, egg ball, or lacy ball, or then obviously the wrestling podcast is the No Ball podcast.
Lacy ball is a very different podcast, Paul.
The eagle-eared amongst you will hear the dulcet tones of the Getting Over podcast host, Mr. Stuart Woodmansey.
Hello.
And the Pursuit of Happiness host has also decided to jump in and talk about football. Mr. Matthew Moore is here as well. And from a points perspective, that's important. Remember that. Cast your minds back to last year. Cast your mind back a couple of weeks where we had 8 football matches to predict. I'm just going to leave that there. Paul, what do you want to get started with?
Well, obviously, it's a perfect time to go through last week's results, because obviously, like you said, there was a large number of games that was predicted. Therefore, obviously, there'll be a large number of results to go through, yeah, because there was definitely no postponements in the intervening games that our teams played, yeah.
So we essentially predicted 3 weeks worth of football, in a sense, in a way. 3 weeks worth of football. 8 games. There was a podcast derby, which was one of the only ones to go ahead. I think, 50%, a little bit more than 50%, and a little bit less than 50% of the games went ahead at various points in time. Yes, if you have been living under a football-shaped rock, you will not know that 50% of the games were postponed between where we started the predictions and where we are now. There are games coming up this week, but those games are of an FA Cup flavour. Well, let's get stuck in. Hull City versus Blackburn Rovers. All that time ago. How did that one go, Stu?
It got PP.
PP. You know what's interesting is when you put PP in all of the boxes for all of the predictions, that's no points for score, no points for goal scorers. So anybody expecting a really high scoring week?
I just point out this is not the first time that Stu's been kiboshed by a PP at Hull incident.
Yeah, true story. So, many moons ago, I may have frequented the club shop from a working standpoint, and the manager was Phil Parkinson when he came in, and they printed all his new gear up and put his initials on his kit, and I chuckled because he had PP on his trousers, and got told off for it. I'm a child. I can't help it. I still find it funny now, a lot of years later.
Who would have thought that a man would be, annoyed that someone equated his name to piss?
You might say he was somewhat pissed off.
Yes.
Was that telling off through chuckle, muted chuckles, you can't say that sort of thing? Was it one of those? Because if it was, I'd have been
it was met with the deadpan stare of the man himself. So, yeah, can we move on now, please?
So, podcast derby that actually did go ahead. Middlesbrough went up against Nottingham Forest. Who wants to field this one?
Well, considering that technically Nottingham Forest opened the scoring, I could defer to Matt. Mr. Moore, thoughts?
No, I'll just let you be a massive dick about it. So crack on.
Yes, it was one of, I believe, 2 games that managed to survive the Boxing Day. I was going to say massacre.
I was going to say massacre, but no, let's not.
Yeah, sadly, obviously, the Hull game was one of the ones lost at a very late hour, which obviously our esteemed colleague was not too happy about. But yeah, Middlesbrough Forest was one of the few games that did go ahead, and Middlesbrough managed to come out 2-0 winners. The reason why I tried to defer the opening gambit to Mr. Moore was that as I said, the opening goal was an own goal scored by the shithouse himself, Ryan Yates, in an effort that really has to be seen to be believed. Because watching it back, they even brought this up in the coverage. If you're playing a back pass to your goalkeeper, you're always told aim it outside of the posts, so that if he misses it, at least you only give away a corner. He obviously didn't remember this and just slotted it straight in the corner.
He was absent that day when they were teaching that in Football 101.
So, opening goal was an own goal by Ryan Yates, and the second goal was scored by Andraz Sporar.
the only person that plays for Middlesbrough.
We might come on to that later, but yes, it would appear so.
Would appear so. Whatever they're paying him, they're not paying him enough, let's put it that way. So, myself and Matt clearly decided to go down the route of, if you predict more goals, you get to predict more goal scorers, so you cover all your bases. Obviously a 2-0 doesn't really help with two lots of 2-2s, so no points for us. Stu predicted a Nottingham Forest win. Not good for Stu. Paul, congratulations, you were the only person to get any points out of the scores. You predicted a slim Middlesbrough 1-0. Luckily for me and Matt, though, clawed it back by both of us putting Sporar down to score. Stu did not, and neither did Paul. So for those games, the scores are looking a little bit like this: a 1 for Paul, a 0 for Stu. Me and Matt have got 1 apiece. So it's all tied currently. Can't see that changing. Another game that actually went ahead, which is an anomaly at the moment, is Blackpool going up against Middlesbrough. Look at Middlesbrough getting the games in. Paul.
Yeah, about that Middlesbrough getting the games in. We'll come to that later on. But yeah, so it was, I believe, on Tuesday. No, it must have been Wednesday. So it was Wednesday. Middlesbrough managed to open the scoring with an Andras Sporar goal.
You surprised me.
I have sworn we've heard that name before, maybe for the last 3 weeks or so. But yes, sadly, the run of clean sheets came to an end, as I've lost the guy's name.
Lavery.
That's the guy. Was it Shane Lavery or
Shane? Yeah.
So Shane Lavery popped up with an absolute heartbreaker 92nd minute equaliser to break the hearts of Middlesbrough fans all over. And then, as the kickoff ensued, Blackpool contrived to give the ball away, to which Isaiah Jones latched onto it and then crossed the ball in for Ginger Hero Duncan Watmore to stick it in the back of the net in about the 93rd or 94th minute to rapturous scenes in the away end at Bloomfield Road, and definitely not a huge COVID outbreak in the first team squad linked to those celebrations. But we won't go into that. That's neither here nor there. So yes, Blackpool 1, Middlesbrough 2 was the final score.
So, follow along with me as I take you all on a journey through picking apart the scores here. Paul, you had a draw, 1-1 down. But luckily for you, you brought it back by putting Sporar down to get one of the goals. Stu, you had Blackpool winning 1-0. And the goal scorer you put down was not the goal scorer. Nil point. I'm just gonna skip over this one to talk about mine, because obviously I put Middlesbrough down to win. I didn't get the goal scorers though, so just 1 point for me. Matt, you put Blackpool 1, Middlesbrough 2. So you get 2 points for that. That's bang on the money. You also put Lavery down to score for Blackpool, and that's right, Watmore down to score for Middlesbrough.
I was possessed for a moment in time.
4 points for you, sir. Obviously, we move swiftly on to talking about Sheffield United versus Hull.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
That's also fun.
There's PP all over the place there. Swiftly on to Nottingham Forest Huddersfield. Matt?
There was PP all over this one, but none of the postponement type. Just awful kind of terribleness. It was a 1-0 loss to Huddersfield. I don't know, a game dominated. It was one of those unfortunate things that due to all the postponements, Forest spent a lot of time on telly over Christmas, which doesn't go down well, but kind of, ends up getting watched. And I watched this game, and Forest played quite well. They dominated the ball. Huddersfield, I'm going to sound like sour grapes, but weren't particularly impressive. And Forest just couldn't finish. There was loads and loads of chances. Not very many of them on target. Some absolute sitters missed, mainly by Brennan Johnson. But just before half time, I think it was Brennan Johnson let Holmes carry on his run into the box, and he just slotted it in. Quite a decent finish. Then, because he's an ex-Derby player, he was a twat about it. And then just remembered that, I've just had a kid, so I'm going to dedicate the goal to my child after I've ran away with my things in my ears because I used to play for Derby, and was obviously booed by the Forest fans. But yeah, 1-0 to Huddersfield. And their manager said they deserved all 3 points because they apparently dominated in periods. I must have missed that bit. But yeah, bit disappointing kind of Christmas time. To go in with the whole kind of thing.
You know what's more disappointing? I'm just going to rip that plaster straight off. Nobody got a single point in this game. Paul, you had a 2-0. Stu, you had a 1-0. Matt had a Desmond, and I had a 2-0. Everybody had Nottingham Forest down to win apart from Matt. And Matt didn't get, of his 2 predicted Huddersfield players, didn't get the one that scored. So 0 across the board. At this point in time, I hope you've all got your abacuses out to follow along with how many points Stu's got.
Absolutely.
I thought, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to save it till the end. So, a running total, because obviously we went 1 point for this section of games for Paul, nothing for Stu, 4 points for Matt, and 1 for myself. Running total, a 2, a nothing, a 5, and a 2. Let's see if that changes for the next section of games. Obviously, Sheffield United and Middlesbrough. Ching, ching, ching. Didn't go ahead. So that brings us to Blackpool versus Hull City.
Which unfortunately did go ahead. So this is the classic story of me giving Paul loads of shit about Blackpool earlier in the season, and it finally coming back to bite me in the ass. However, much like Matt in his description of the last Forest game, it was a disappointing result, not for the fact that they lost, but also they were ahead on the possession. One sloppy tackle cost them a penalty, which I listened to the game on the radio, and they were undecided whether or not it was a penalty or not. Watching the replays back, you could see it from one certain angle if you squinted a bit and tilted your head to the side. So it was clearly a penalty. Annoyingly, Hull had double the amount of shots on target that Blackpool had. However, only one of them counted, and unfortunately it was for the Tangerines. So yeah, it was a Gary Medine penalty in the 31st minute, gave Blackpool a very undeserved 1-0 win.
This is where I realised where everything had gone wrong. Because when I was looking at the scores, I was like, this is the problem right here. Stu put his own team down to win. And that's what's done it. Jinxed himself. Absolutely killed it. This is also another game where nobody got any points because, everybody put Hull down to win. And of the one person that put a Blackpool scorer down, not the person that scored. So bear in mind, for this section of games, we've had PP, 0 points, and oh dear. Nottingham Forest versus Barnsley didn't go ahead, so that's no points there. So, Paul, you finished the week on 2 points. Stu, you finished the week with nothing. I finished the week on 2 points. Matt obviously came to play, winning the week by taking everybody else's score, adding them together, and being like, nah, I want more. 5 points for you, sir. Congratulations on winning the 8 predicted games, of which 4 of them went ahead. Now then, Paul, what do you want to do? Do you want to go through any of the news, or do you want to get straight on the predicting train?
Let's jump ahead and do the predictions, and we'll close out with the news and whatnot. As I don't think there's much news. I've got a couple of bits of Middlesbrough-based news. Stu obviously has some news there. But yeah, we'll do the predictions, as I believe we slide into cup-based nonsense this weekend.
So I struggled to find the games and had to clarify. I was like, hang on, I've gone nearly 2 weeks into the future and I cannot find any football games. But there's all of this FA Cup thing, and I seem to have found names I recognise. Is it FA Cup? And I was confirmed that it was in fact FA Cup. Looks like some interesting games to go through. The first of which is Mansfield versus Middlesbrough. So the two M's are going up against each other. Paul, you will pick last, as it is your team. I have put all of my scores in, and I'll just garnish those throughout. But Stu.
Okay.
Mansfield, Middlesbrough.
Well, for regular listeners, you'll be pleased to see that Paul is sat down, if indeed you are switched to the YouTube variety, because seeing as it is an FA Cup game, and God knows what team will be played from any of these sides in these games, why not give Tavernier a goal for Middlesbrough in this one, on the basis that, I mean, if he's not going to score against the lower league side, he's never going to score ever again. And I've gone for Jones as well in a Middlesbrough 2-0 win. I said he'd never score in the league, so, why not?
Okay. Matt?
I have gone for a 2-1 Middlesbrough win.
Okay.
I've got Oates for Mansfield. And Coburn and Howson for Middlesbrough.
Howson. Nice. I've just gone with a 1-0 win for Middlesbrough. with Sporra to score. Paul.
So Cup, as like last year, they've abolished replays, so this will be a one and done tie. So if it's obviously level after 90 minutes, they'll have extra time and then penalties if needed. I think there will be wholesale changes, as to this point he hasn't really used much of his squad, so there'll be players in there that he hasn't seen play yet. I will go similar to Stuart. I'll go for 2-0, and I will go with Coburn and Payero to score. I don't think Tavernier will play.
I mean, he's very rarely played whenever I've seen him, Paul, so...
Wow. I cannot wait until the game at the Riverside later in the season where he scores hat-trick as well.
So, Hull are going up against Everton.
Live on TV, no less.
It's at this point I have to apologise for my predictions for the next two games, as I've had to go against type, I'm afraid. And I'm going to tell you what this one is right now. I've gone with a Everton 2, Hull 0. I've gone Townsend and Rondon, because I thought it sounded masterful.
Masterful.
Yeah. Matt?
I've also gone on the pessimistic side of life on this one. I've gone for 3-1 to Everton. Lewis Potter, snapping one for Hull, just to keep his his stats up. And then I've also gone for Townsend and Rondon, and it will be
Woobs.
Paul?
Just checking the squad, as again, I think you'll see a lot of rotation of players. So if he's still there, just checking. Can I have Tosun to score for Everton?
Here's your one.
Along with Gomez and Mikolenko in a 3-0 win.
Stu?
Well, after Paul's now finished naming all of the Aldi version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I will surprise you all and say that this will be a cup upset. So I've gone for a 1-0 Hull win.
Yes!
And why not get straight back on that bandwagon? Let's have a George Honeyman goal, please.
I love it. So, I reckon we can knock out a Nottingham Forest versus Arsenal in 3 minutes. Let's find out. Nottingham Forest versus Arsenal. Matt, you will go last. Stu, you will go first.
Okay. Unfortunately for Matt, I have gone Nottingham Forest 1, Arsenal 3. So I suppose inadvertently returning the favour, but I've gone for Cafu for Forest. And for Arsenal, Smith Rowe, El Neni, and Saka if he plays.
Okay. Very similar to what I've gone for, because I've gone for a 1-2. Obviously, Grabham to score for Forest. I've gone with Pepe Pep. One of those. And Saka as well. Paul.
0-2, please.
Okay.
I'll go with the guy who only seems to score in cup competitions, Nketiah, and Sandy Lokonga.
Okay, Matt.
I'm going to tell you all how it's really going to go down now. It's going to be 4-1 to Arsenal.
I won't fire off.
Because I think there's going to be a lot of changes in the Forest side as well, with COVID and stuff. So I've got Lyle Taylor getting 1 for Forest, because I think he'll get a game, because Graven will be rested. Then Nketiah, 2, a brace. So he loves them cup competitions. And Cedric Soares as 1, and then Tavares for the 4th.
Lovely stuff. That right there is all the games predicted. Before we get deep into buckets of news, we're going to take a small commercial break. So we will be right back. Don't go changing.
Recording in progress.
Absolutely is. There we go. Straight back at it. So, games predicted. Just that FA Cup goodness. So, it's been a little while. Not a million years, but a little while since we all sat down here to talk about the round-shaped ball. So surely there must be plenty of news to go through. No? Yeah? No?
I mean, for me, it's mainly all the same old, like postponements left, right, and centre because of COVID. The only thing I really had was obviously that the transfer window is now open until the end of January, and Middlesbrough have already made 1 addition. It was all over the sort of like the papers and the rumours section of Sky Sports for about a week or so before it officially went through, but they've signed Aaron Connolly on loan from Brighton until the end of the season. I was tempted to pick him to score in the cup, but alas, no. I don't know if he'll come straight in, but we'll wait and see. One thing that did come up from all the COVID stuff for Middlesbrough was that before the Sheffield United game officially got called off and postponed by the EFL, there was apparently Chris Wilder had come out and been told that they would have to put together a squad as best they could, which at the time involved them having to try and recall all of the players that were out on loan. Obviously, one of which is Jed Spence, who's at Forest. Obviously, that never materialised because of the fact that the game got postponed. And Wilder's now come out and said that the loan was agreed before he came to the club, so it had been agreed for the duration of the season. So he's not going to go against the terms of the deal and stuff like that. So he said that he's happy for him to stay there until the end of the season on loan. So Spence will not be being recalled by Middlesbrough in January.
Apparently, it's been the loan agreement's been renegotiated.
Oh,
that's what was the kind of thing. So it's the terms have been renegotiated, which kind of I don't know like what details are, but then there's rumours kind of around Nottingham that it's either a loan with like negotiations ongoing about a permanent move in January, or it's a loan with a view to making it permanent in the summer. But yeah, that obviously went from being like in the space of like 3 hours. It went from Wilder said that he's not going to be recalling any players to he's been told he has to recall players, because if you've got players that you can recall to make a match day squad to therefore play the game, and he effectively said, "Yeah, I'm going to recall Jed, make him drive all the way up from Nottingham to Middlesbrough, sit on the bench and watch the game." And with the possibility of him being loaned out, and then it was like, next thing you know, I know the game's off. So that's kind of drawing a line under that one. Obviously, I'm going to go through. Forest have signed. I've immediately forgotten. They signed Keenan Davis from Aston Villa. It's meant to be like a promising young striker. And then today signed Steve Cook from Bournemouth, the Bournemouth captain, no less, which was a surprise. I think Bournemouth fans aren't happy about it. Obviously, Forest fans are. And it kind of goes against this transfer policy that this kind of Moneyball CEO that we've got, that's meant to be you buy young players to either sell them on at a profit, or kind of they get you to where you want to be, and he has an algorithm for what he wants for his players and stuff like that. But obviously, Stein, Steve Cook, and obviously the Jed Spence kind of thing kind of rumbles on, really. Yeah, he's currently with Forest till the end of the season, but could be permanent. But, again, there's a lot of rumours about different players coming into Forest through the transfer window, mainly strikers, because we discussed the old Bond over the Banjo situation.
Any signing?
I haven't heard anything about transfers at Hull. Primarily, probably because of what happened on The Voice in Turkey. Confused? So, the long, drawn-out saga that has been the takeover of Hull City, finally saying goodbye to the Alam family, was announced live on Turkish television by the prospective new owner. Now, forgive me for the pronunciation, Akun Ilikali, possibly, or Ilikali. Despite nothing being made official yet, he announced it on live television in Turkey in the build-up to the new year, which apparently sent their Instagram account into absolute meltdown with new followers from Turkey. So we're expecting final EFL approval, hopefully, before the Everton game at the weekend. So this time next week, I could be sat here telling you that we do indeed have new owners. Whether they'll be better than the Alams or not, watch this space. We shall see. It may be a case of better the devil you know, but I guess let's not crap all over it before it happens. We'll find out. So that was my bit of local news this week.
Anything else news-based?
I think the only thing, I don't know if you guys have seen it, like the return of standing or safe standing to football grounds. Obviously over the Christmas, so can't think how many. So I think they brought it up last night at Old Trafford. There was 500 of the away support in the safe standing section, and I think it was 1,000 people, 1,000 supporters, Man United supporters. I think a couple of other grounds as well. Chelsea also had it at their stadiums. I think it's kind of gone under the radar, possibly with all the COVID stuff and that type of thing. And I think it's, obviously the Hillsborough disasters, 24 years ago now, and 1980, 33 years ago, if my math letting me down. There's been no standing in ground since 1994. And I don't know whether you guys have ever stood up. I think
this is top flight football
grounds.
It's
like a packed standing kind of thing. I think that's the kind of difference. Like, I've stood up at grounds past 1994 because obviously for lower divisions, you're allowed to stand in the spacings decent enough that everyone's safe. I think, but for me, I stood in the Holt end at Villa Park when it was still standing for an FA Cup semi-final, and bloody scary would be the kind of thingy. And I stood in the Trent end for Brian Clough's last match at the City Ground, and it was meant to be the last match. The Trent end was going to be there, and as a 11-year-old, it was the most scary experience I've ever had. And I know the safe standing is not going to be like the old standing. And I think, obviously, with ticketing the way it is nowadays, it will be controlled, the amount of people that go into those sections. But I just think it's kind of snuck under the radar a little bit. And I know, like, a lot of the Hillsborough families have kind of said they're okay with it. But kind of having, like, I told you guys that my uncle was at Hillsborough that day in the Forest End, and he just never talked. He never talked about it because he said, the only thing he ever said was, "It's the worst thing I've ever seen at a football match," and that's it. And without speaking to him, you kind of think, like, how do people feel about it? Because whenever we were in crowds, kind of going to the football or coming back from the football, like, my dad would have hold of me, but you could always, like, my uncle's like tall guys, like 6'4", got massive hands, and you just feel the grasp of his hand on my shoulder because he was just constantly worried about me even as like a teenager as well. Just like, the crowds are too big, the crowds are too kind of thingy. And I think it's I think for some people it's a welcome return. I think, the atmosphere is not the same without standing. And you kind of think, yeah, but I don't know, where does it go from here, really? Hopefully it's done safely. I think it's safe standing, but hopefully it continues to be safe and kind of controlled.
Yeah, I think for me, it's because obviously I've been to certain away games with Borough, where even though it is seating, you pretty much stood for the entirety of the game anyway, just because it's that sort of domino effect of the second someone on the front row stands up in front of you, it's just a knock on and it just goes back. So you just end up standing anyway. Obviously, like you said, with ticketing control, and obviously you're assigned a seat. Therefore, you have, as like JR has said on his podcast before, you've got that 18-inch space, or however big it is, that every sort of seat is filled with. So, in theory, as long as the allocation isn't sold out, you should only ever have so many people in that space. And it shouldn't be an issue. The problem you've got is that obviously when goals are scored and the surge forward happens, obviously on terracing, there's nothing to sort of stop you from falling forward. Whereas when there's a seat there, obviously you're more likely to sort of fall over and like get caught up in all the chair and stuff like that, and that's where injuries can sort of happen.
And like, I don't know if this will pick it up so well, but that's kind of like, it's not just, so you get a bit of a seat and there's like the bar in front of you, so it kind of...
It's called rail seating. So the idea is that you can basically fold the chairs, so I think they sit within the barrier. So right. It almost sort of just becomes like its own sort of stand section barrier type thing. Obviously, like we've said, you can still stand at lower league grounds. Obviously, I've gone to polls on many an occasion, and that's still... two of the three stands are mainly terracing there. Granted, Pools' capacity is only about 8,000 people, and it never ever sells out, so that never feels particularly like busy or full or anything like that. Thankfully, I've never had anything like Matt's just described there, where you've got a bit of a sort of a sway and a bit of a crush developing and things like that. So I think as long as it's policed properly, and as long as they don't as long as clubs don't get greedy and think, well, if we're taking out the seating spaces, we can maybe get 2 people in for every space of the seating that's saved. So if they are saying that it's 500 people, as long as they don't try and sell 750 tickets as like a sort of an estimate or something like that, as long as they stick to we've opened a terrace in section 4, X amount of people. As long as they stick to that, and they have the stewards checking rigorously the tickets to make sure that people that are going into that section have terracing based tickets, then I think it'll be successful, because, like I say, you get people standing at grounds as it is now anyway. So it just needs to be policed and sold properly for them.
Anything else news based?
The Southampton takeover has just gone through, hasn't it? Breaking news. So Southampton have been taken over for the same price as Jack Grealish was bought by Manchester City, which, I mean, I'm sure Paul will be enjoying that. We all know he loves a bit of Greals. But I thought that was a bit of a strange one, that, because obviously we've spoken at length before about the Newcastle takeover, and that was 400 and something million. Them guys must be kicking themselves now, because Southampton have blatantly got a better youth setup for a start. I would imagine a very similar fan base in the realms of the kind of sort of stuck in that catchment area. There's not too many other things around there. Obviously, nobody's going to really go Portsmouth anymore from that respect. Shots fired. But not only that, but for what, 350 million-ish less, they've also got a team that are going to be in the Premier League next season. So there's also that. That's such a strange thing that they've, like, I don't know where they get the valuation from, but to me, surely Southampton has got to be worth more as a business prospect than Newcastle.
I'm going to sound like I drink the Newcastle Kool-Aid here. I think as a global kind of brand, which is annoying, I think probably Newcastle are a bigger brand than Southampton, kind of internationally. Obviously with like former players, nothing that they've done in the past like 15 years, only like from former players and stuff like that. I don't know. I think sometimes I don't know the ins and outs of it, of like who owns the ground, because if like the local council owns the ground or something like that, then obviously that reduces the value of the club.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the guy that owned that's just sold it was just financially buggered, because he just, I think something I was reading there, like the chats, whatever his business was, the Chinese government just went, yeah, we'll have that, thank you. And he's kind of gone, oh right, all the money that I thought I had is now non-existent, so I'll have to kind of sell 80% of the club. But yeah, to think that a club that's been like stably in the Premiership for at least 4 years now is going for a quarter of a club that has yo-yoed essentially and just about scraped in, seems bizarre, and doesn't really have much, like you said, in much of a youth setup. Doesn't have much in terms of assets, in terms of players. All I can presume is that it's like, well, they've got a big stadium, and we've seen them on the telly more than Southampton, maybe. I don't know. Like, that's probably it. And maybe they just really like Sports Direct. They just love a good bargain.
Well, they can't like it that much if they've taken the bloody signs down at the stadium.
It's maybe the opposite then. Maybe they hate the place. Maybe they were like, God damn it, why can't I just have a cup of tea in a normal size mug?
Want Slazenger trainers anymore? My mates keep on picking on us.
Listen, everyone knows that Dunlop is the premier golf brand in the world, so...
But yeah, that was it for me.
Brings us to any other business?
No, sadly I wasn't able to find anything funny this week. Too much bad nonsense going around in the world, unfortunately.
I thought you would have taken plenty of comedic value from the fact that Hull lost to Blackpool still, but you know.
I'm not like that, Stuart. I'm not that way inclined.
Only
Even I found it funny after the amount of stick I gave you earlier this season.
It's just quite difficult from miles up here on my high horse. So.
Wow. Well, there we go. A new year, a new podcast with the same name. Football's back in full swing. Obviously straight into cup games, but hey, it's football at the end of the day. We're back here talking football week in, week out. And I suppose from us here at the Football Podcast to you out there, it's a happy new year, and it's enjoy the upcoming football games as long as they don't get postponed. Join us next week when we'll definitely be going through the games we predicted this week and talking more football, whether it's news or whether it's upcoming games. It's goodbye from these guys here, and it's goodbye from me, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye. So there you go, what do you think to that? Another week of football games gone, another week of football games to come, and a new year of football to enjoy. Thank you very much for joining us, and I will thank you even more if you're one of our lovely subscribers or if you're about to become one. Subscribe, like, share, comment, give it to your neighbour, whichever you want to do. It's all great. That's it for this one. Till next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.